we're going to look at a couple of techniques. First of all, we'll look at uchi, and then we're going to look at hiji or empi. Hijiate, elbow strike, or empi is what it's commonly called. Empi actually means the monkey strike.
Really?
Funnily enough, yeah. So empi means a monkey strike, and I guess, you know, monkeys, if you've ever watched chimps and monkeys fighting, they have a they really know how to use that dead weight. In fact, in the old days, when I was teaching some self-defense, what we'd often do is we'd take the idea of dead weight, and what we called it a Greystoke. Remember that movie Greystoke about Tarzan? And if you were to watch that movie, there's times when the chimpanzees are fighting. And what they do is they knock a chimp down, and then they just do this dead weight punching down. They just dead weight down. We used to call it a Greystoke. When you're there, don't infatuate over doing a good technique or anything. Just relax and let gravity do the work. And it was the most effective thing. Well, a lot of techniques actually are kind of like that. If you can take this idea of dead weight and project it forward, and so that's what elbows really can be very effective like that. So let's quickly look at now uchi. We want to line it up with the shoulders here. See, like that. The worst thing you can do is have your hands here and throw it. That's not uchi. Uchi means a chin strike, so obviously you'll aim for the chin. And as we said, you don't aim for the chin, you aim for the tip of the split hair in the middle of the pimple, in the middle of the dimple, in the middle of the chin. So if you miss one, you get the next, etc., etc. Okay, so we don't want to have the hands here because it teaches a bad habit of fighting square. The only time you want to fight square is if you're wrestling and you need to be able to switch sides very suddenly. For karate, we tend to wedge forward, okay? Hide your shoulder, hide your neck behind your shoulder. So the reality is, for the hiji, for the uchi, if you want to work out, now you keep your hands up too, the best way to take this position and turn in your fighting position, look, I take this hand and bring it across. I turn my head to the side, and then I turn my feet in a half. So now I'm in a half sanchin, and then my elbows are in, and my hands. So that's the real fighting default position, right? We twist back to the front, and that takes you back to uchi. So if you think about that, that will teach you something very fundamental about the technique. Which is, when I throw the technique, I don't want to leave my shoulders square, like this. When I throw the technique, I turn my shoulders, and it comes off the circle and point that also talks about. So I retract this hand, shoot that one out. Retract, shoot. Retract, shoot, like that. Move across a little push. Yeah. So watch, 1, 2. So when Mitch punches, his whole shoulder's turning. Yes, so you want that line to go all the way along and back. When he turns, when he punches, everything shoots straight, like that. You see how that is going, like turning the whole body. It's really important. So 1, good. Notice Mitch does a little bob, which he needs to get rid of. Do it again, 1. So you want to treat it like your hand's being pulled by a rope. And if I had a rope tied to Mitch's hand and it was being accelerated off by a car, he's not going to have an opportunity to pull it back slightly. He's just going to go, boom, like that. So that's the feeling you want. When you hear the count, the hand simply accelerates forward. 1, 2, it's, me, some, she, go, go. See, that's when you do it, the whole body turns. Now, another good way to practice this, which we do in the dojo sometimes, just move off to the side for a second. I take my sanchin, I take uchi, and then what I do is I rotate. This will teach you to get the weight in the correct leg. So when I throw the right punch, I want the weight on the right leg. Doesn't matter whether it's right or whether it's forward or back. When I throw the left, I want the weight on the left leg, so it doesn't matter whether the left leg is forward or back. So if I take my default position, left leg in front, left hand in front, when I throw the left, I want my weight tending to the left, and a good way to drill that is lift the heel. Benny, look at this. Boom. See that? So my weight goes to the left. When I throw the right, my weight sinks to the right. I don't want to keep my weight to the left. Otherwise, it's like the milk pail. You've milked the cow, and by the time you get back home, all the milk's run out of the little holes. Well, it's like when I throw the punch, I'm spilling all the milk over there somewhere. I need everything, my ankle, my toes, my knee, my hip, my lat, my elbow, my wrist, everything is lined up for the punch there, you see. So when I throw left, we say in the dojo, weight on left for left. Weight on right for right. Okay, now with that in mind, when you practice uchi, here's a good way to practice it. I'm going to go left, punch left with my right, boom, there, and back. Punch right with my left, back. See my feet, I keep my weight on the punchy leg, and back. When I throw with my right to the left, there like this, and I keep the weight down and back. 1, 2, 3. My shoulders shot to bits, that's why I'm going so slow. Itch, knee, some. Notice I keep my weight on that leg. I don't do this. Lean over, lean over. I keep the weight on the left leg for the left punch. I keep the weight on the right leg for the right punch. So we go right, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Okay, that's a really nice way to practice uchi. And that'll teach you, remember, to get the correct weight on the correct leg. Come in a little closer. My apologies that it's vertical. It's not landscape. So that's a really good way to practice the uchi. Now let's look at the hiji. Okay, so there's lots of different hiji. Hiji is elbow. But the fundamental 30 basic techniques includes one hiji. Even though if you're a black belt, there's a really good chance that you've gone 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, like that. Yeah, and there's that one as well. So we do these in kata, but we don't normally practice them. Because the reality is you're not going to do this one a lot in a real fight unless the guy comes in, you come down, and then you can drop it down on top of the head like that, which is a really dangerous technique, but very effective. You know the techniques that are really effective, they're the ones that are illegal in MMA. And a vertical elbow is illegal in MMA. Okay? God knows why that's illegal and this isn't. A lot of things in MMA that are pretty dangerous. Crazy, right? Okay, so we look at hiji, I think, come to the middle. So we take sanshi once again. The thing to remember with hiji, so put your left elbow out. The thing to remember with hiji is, as Mitch does it, I'll do it to the side. So we go 1, 2, 3, 4. Now watch. When I do the shoulder correctly, look where my arm is. Pushes the elbow out. I don't want it back here. Which a lot of people do. The reality is I want to go boop, 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 boop. And I push my elbow. I don't lean forward, I extend my shoulder. 1, extend the shoulder. See how the shoulder's extended? So that's where you hit, right there. 2, there, see this? And of course, as you know, it's always in line with the shito. Elbows always land in line with the elbow, with the shito. So if I want to hit up, I hit up in line with the knife hand. If I want to hit across, I turn the knife hand over. If I want to hit down, I turn the knife hand down. I don't come down and roll over with the meaty part. I come here and I turn my knife hand down. See that? And come down. If I want to come up with the knife hand. If I go down, knife hand. Go across, knife hand like that. Okay? Now another beautiful point to remember about elbows is the distance for a headbutt is exactly the same as a distance for an elbow. So if I want to headbutt Mitch, if I can headbutt him, I can elbow him. But if I'm back 1 centimetre and I know I can I know from sensing it, because as a kid you hit your head on so many things, you start to get a good idea of the distance that you can headbutt something. So I can't headbutt it now, which means I can't elbow it now. Almost down to the millimetre. If I come forward, now I can headbutt it. Boom, now I can elbow it. So it's really good to remember, if you're wondering, can you elbow someone from a certain distance? If I can headbutt him, bang, I can elbow him. That's your distance, is almost down to a millimetre. In fact, I haven't found an exception to that. Very interesting.
Yeah.
So the elbow's forward. It's good. Now you see how Mitch pulls his arm really nicely here. So from the front, just move over a little bit. So from the front, you can't see his back elbow. That's really important. So when he does the elbow, a lot of people connect their hands, do it wrongly, but their hands are kind of connected. They kind of do this sort of thing, and they rock their hands backwards and forwards. Yes, like this. Okay? That's not the correct way to do it. The correct way is this. Arm rips back and the elbow pops out. Go. It's like that. Neat. Good. Son? Good. So the retracting hand creates the tension across the shoulders, so you get that nice cut. It's neat. San, shi, go, do. It's touch, ku, do. Good. And relax. Now, fundamentally, there are two types of elbows. And I'm ashamed to say I've actually used them both. But
on camera, allegedly.
Allegedly, yes. I can't remember. It's too long ago. But one is what I call a whipping elbow, where you want to come up and you really want to go crack with a guy. Another one is what I call a cutting elbow. So the cutting elbow has the effect of when you hit, you hardly feel it, and if you blink when you hit and you open it, he's not there, because he's usually unconscious in a pile on the ground. Because a cutting elbow is literally, it's like that. It's really sharp. You want to go there, boom, and pop it really sharp, and that has the effect of dropping him down. A whipping elbow is when you come flying with an elbow like that. I don't think it's very practical. A lot of people talk about the whipping elbow. Maybe there's a time and place for it, but for me, the only one is the cutting elbow. You get the cutting elbow right, it works super, super sharply. So anyway, we're going to continue today. Just briefly, we want to discuss longevity and training. Okay? Now, when you're young, you're 10 foot tall and bulletproof, right? You have no idea really of what it's like to train, for older people to train. So with the benefit of the years, and now that I'm in my 60s, I can tell you that there's a few things you need to keep in mind when you train. And one is intensity. So what does intensity really mean?
Well, intensity is how it's an effort essentially compared to absolute maximum. Intensity gets confused. So intensity in terms of absolute intensity is your maximal effort. But people often talk about intensity in terms of that run was so hard, it was 20 minutes, it was really intense. It actually wasn't intense from a pure intensity point of view. It was probably an anaerobic threshold run, or something like that. So just the word intensity itself gets confused. Gets very confusing. Yes. And so whenever you talk to them about intensity, you've got to pick up quickly, are they talking about intensity in terms of like a repetition maximum or a single maximum effort? Like an Olympic lift is intense, a power lift is in. We used to do those rounds before tournaments, 7, 5, 3, 2, 2, 2.
Yes.
That's incredibly intense, but it's a different level of intensity.
Yes. So for training purposes, people ask me what intensity is, and I just tell them it's a measure of effort. And you can change the intensity in a number of different ways, right?
Yes.
You can change the intensity by how far you move a lever. So for example, that is a lot less tense than that. You can change intensity of a squat by squatting deeper.
Yes.
So you can change the intensity by the length you move the lever. You can change the intensity by the volume.
Yes.
Doing
how many?
2 of those is a lot easier than doing 2,000 of those. Whether one's more beneficial than the other depends on what your objective is. Okay, you can change the intensity by the range of motion, the number, the length, the speed of the technique.
The resistance.
Yes. So resistance, for example, you can do normal push-ups, or you can get a band around your shoulders, and as you push up, you increase the intensity. So they're really, really important ways to understand intensity. But in terms of longevity and training, I think it's really, really important to understand that you have to really treat intensity very carefully.
Yes.
What you could consider to be useful, intense training in your 20s, then 30s and 40s and 50s and 60s is very different. I think, is that a fair call?
Oh, absolutely. I think if you look at it from a really long term, I think something like consistency is probably more important than intensity long term in training. That doesn't mean to be taken out of context and people think that, you don't have to train intense for periods of time, because that's definitely not the case. But just for a long, long period of time to continue training, it has to be ebbs and flows, and doing something is more important than doing something really hard irregularly, especially in a skill development art such as Kyokushin karate or martial arts.
Yeah. Yogananda used to say, it's not the big experiences that make the difference. It's the constant daily attention to applying yourself in little things that makes the big difference. And it's the same with training. Later on in age, when you're young, like Frank Everett, my instructor, used to say, when you're young, just whip the body. Because you wake up the next day and you're fine. Your body recovers very quickly. When you're much older, from my experience, if I try to do a really solid couple of intense workouts in a single day, or if I try to repeat that for 2 or 3 days, I'm totaled. My body breaks down, it doesn't recover anywhere near as much, and particularly the joints.
Yes.
So, is joint integrity a problem as you get older?
Oh yeah, enormously. And that's the joints are reflective of, generally speaking, of the stresses and stimulus we give the body. So an example is, if your posture is inappropriate, you're holding joints in a certain integrity that's not ideal. And then there's the connective tissue length and tension. So if our connective tissue is short and tight, it essentially, I'll do it on white background, it jams the joints together, essentially is what it does. So we can do things to put them in traction and pull them apart, but all training shortens and tightens connective tissues, which therefore changes the integrity of the joints. So yes, and some people are more prone to things, and other people just have beautiful alignment and joint integrity that they can train their whole lives and get nothing.
Well, look at Oishi Shihan, who's now in his 70s, and he still kicks better than most 20-year-olds today.
I've seen the video.
Yeah, it's incredible. It really makes a difference. And then what you do is, as you get older, you get smarter. So, like Mike Clark said, did you see what Mike Clark said? He still trains to kick people in the head. He just gets them to lie down first. So that's called strategy. That's true. But I find, look, I'm training more regularly, more often now than I have for a long, long time. I'm training 3, 6, 7, 8, 9. Well, until last week, 10, 11, 12, 13 times a week. But I can tell you now that the intensity is very careful. My primary objective of every training session at this point is to get out of the dojo uninjured. And that's not just not doing kumite to take the whacks. That also means knowing when to pull back, knowing when to be careful, watching your joint integrity on the jigsaw mats, making sure that your alignment is correct when you do things, even when you stretch. Poor alignment and stretching as you get older will impact more negatively than when you're young. It'll still impact when you're young.
Oh, it will, and that's one of the things you talked about before. When you're young, the older we get, our hormone levels change, our dehydration changes, we're less hydrated around joints, we've got more wear on the articulating surfaces of joints and so on. So, yeah, it's of course, if we're out of line and do something, and anyone that's a little bit older, I'm going to say over 40 or over 50, they'll know that if you have stirred a joint up, that joint can remain stirred for a couple of weeks sometimes.
Yes.
So you've got to be you don't want to, yeah, longer. It can, for a year. I've got a client this morning I was talking to, and she wants to get her joint right by the end of the year, but she's in her 60s. So these are the realities.
My number one goal in training is to train every day, regularly, do something, a little bit every day.
I was thinking of you, Chris.
If you do a little bit every day, that makes all the difference. And even I'm finding, we discussed this last week, Kyokushin warm-up is fantastic, and you can use just the warm-out as a workout. The things that you used to do without a problem, as you get older, become a challenge. Even sitting down in Seiza takes 10 seconds for your body to settle down, for your joints to settle down when you sit. Whereas before you could sit in Seiza and jump up from Seiza into fighting, all that sort of stuff.
Yeah, and the other thing too is there's a couple of things that impact our body's, our joints' ability to bend or our connective tissue's ability to move or to lengthen. And one of them is stretching, is flexibility. And we improve our length of our connective tissue through stretching. And then the second one is tension. And we improve our tension through mobile things, through manual therapy. So in Xian's trap, it might be doing this type of thing on that side. It might be having a ball in the neck and pushing it. It might be rolling on a roller or a tennis ball. So a lot of the times, as we age, the length can become a challenge, but sometimes it's the connective tissue tension that's a challenge, and that needs to be rectified through some sort of manual therapy. That, like I said, it can be a ball, it can be some sort of roller, you can use a drink bottle just as an example, something like that to roll on. So there's some other solutions to soften the tissues so they want to go longer when you want them to go longer as well.
Yeah, and regular massage. I think anything that you can do to help your body return to normal.
Yes.
Because as you get older, it takes longer. What about ice baths?
Look, you've got to try it and see with a lot of modalities and therapies. I think ice baths have some validity. I think they've been probably overrated a little bit in some ways. Like, it doesn't have to be 2 degrees and absolutely freezing to get a recovery component, because that's an energetic cost sometimes that you don't recover. It's a new stimulus you've got to adapt to. So a moderately cool water, or just the exposure of the skin to water a lot of the time, I think is probably even more beneficial, especially like we are. We've got the ocean just 2 minutes down the road, and you get all those negative ions and your body's in the sand engulfed in water. I think that as a recovery modality is excellent. But I think there's benefits to ice baths as well in terms of the challenge of dealing with your breath. That's a whole nother area, but dealing with the breath when you're freezing, to control the mind and control the body. I think that's a separate thing. But as far as an ultimate recovery, is it necessary? No. Can it help? I think so, in certain circumstances.
One of the things that Wim Hof has done is brought this awareness of the cold sort of approach to and everything. But the downside is people think it has to be absolutely freezing.
That's
it
right.
doesn't. A healthy ice bath may well be more around 7, 8, 9 degrees rather than 0.
And let me give this context too. It's like training. If you go to, I'll just use Kyokushin as an example, and you go and train with a tournament squad in their peak and you've never trained before, you're going to walk out of that set, you're going to be in big trouble. If you jump into a cold body of water, or even a hot sauna as an example, at their extreme, you've never done it, you're going to be in trouble. So it's the same thing in training. You want to start at a certain level and then build up over time and find out what's optimal for you. That's with hot and cold modalities.
And Mitch mentioned the beach before. I'm very fortunate, I'm only a couple of minutes away from the beach, so I try to get down magnesium.
Oh, yeah.
See, I put magnesium salts in a bath.
In baths, yes.
Yeah,
Big
I
fan.
love that. Yeah.
Yep.
In fact, would you believe I actually buy magnesium salts in 25 kilo bags?
Yes.
Because the more you put in,
the better.
Yeah.
Yeah. And there's a lot of debate around that. Some people think transdermally it doesn't work, blah, blah, blah. But ultimately you want to come to your own conclusions based on your own experiences with everything. Because ultimately it's each of our own experiences that matter. So I'm a huge fan of magnesium baths. I do them myself.
And see, Gaz mentioned too, magnesium oil has been good, a godsend. Look, whatever works for you, that's true,
Yep.
mate. It's the bomb. And like Mike says, he's grateful that karate gives us something a little bit more than the average sport. And that's the mindfulness. That's the focus on the breath. That's bringing our consciousness inside. That's why I call sometimes karate is a type of pseudo-religion, if you like, because religion, a lot of people are They don't like to go near religion, but they want the benefits that religion offers, namely the inner peace and the calm and all that sort of stuff. And so karate fills the void, and the focus on the breath and doing those kata, just doing the sanshin and the tensho kata alone gives that body its all-round motion. I agree with you. And because I'm close to the beach, I head down twice a week. I can't go more than that because I just can't. But just those twice a week going down the beach, getting in that salt water, sucking in the negative ions, being exposed to nature. Sorso said, whenever you can train in nature, you should take advantage of it. And also if you can train near bodies of water. For joint stuff, I actually really like, would you believe, red tiger balm. I've been using tiger balm for close to 50 years, so maybe that's psychological as well, but I love putting the tiger balm on my joints. It seems to do a pretty good job, and it's been around for 100 years, so it's got longevity.
Yeah.
But the Chinese bone stuff that Paul just mentioned then, I use that all the time, especially after makiwara, when I used to do makiwara, Paul. Oh yeah, you're welcome. I didn't realise I did, but I use them on my hands a lot when I do my makiwara work to help relieve that. So pretty important. So longevity in karate, for me, it's like a bell curve. Well, yeah, it's a bell curve. When you're young and you're a beginner, you increase the intensity of your training in all kinds of ways. But as you get older, you have to decrease the intensity, but increase the frequency, I think. I find with tiger balm, the rashes happen more, Paul, when you cover it with a brace. So I put tiger balm on, cover it with a brace, gets no airflow, and it seems to cause more of a rash. If I just do it normally, I don't get the rash as badly. But so as you get older, I think the important thing is move. Doesn't matter what you do. Walk, do a little bit of stretching, do fundamental movements in your body, which you think are not necessarily helpful, but the expansion and contraction of the spine, the retraction of the scapula, which you get in karate anyway through this sanshin motion.
That's beautiful.
Don't underestimate the importance. Don't be like this, where your elbows are out and your arms are in. That's what people who don't train well do. There, you want the scapular retraction so that the shoulders are back, the elbows are in, the hands are out. Okay, that retraction where you retract the elbow but relax the shoulder, not like this, which you'll see people do all the time. Like that, retract there, you get the scapular retraction. In fact, in the old days when I used to teach this at the dojo, I'd get someone to put their hand in my spine between the scapula, and then you do the sanshin movement, and you feel those scapula pulling together there. That's a really good way to tell. And then when I pull my hand back, I get Mitch to put his hand between I'll go this side. If I do this correctly, and he puts his hands right in my spine, when I pull this back, you start to feel the scapula pinching together.
Yes.
And that's where you get the health benefits of all good exercise improves posture. All bad exercise destroys posture. And karate, Masayama used to say, you can tell the sort of martial arts someone does by their posture. People who did kendo and karate had really good posture. Okay, but people who do judo, if they're not careful, if they're not conscious of it, will start to bend over like that.
Absolutely. It's the same for the lower body as well, sanshin. We've talked about it before, but the internal rotation of the feet in sanshin, the posterior pelvic tilt, or the pelvis being top of the pelvis going backwards, I guess you can say, in a layman's way, is so healthy. It's the external rotation of the upper body and the internal rotation of the lower body is the exact opposite to what you see when you're out in the world. I mean, you can do the test yourself. You go out in the world and you can count the knuckles on the front of the fingers when you're looking at people at a barbecue or in the shopping centre line or something like that at a cafe, and their feet will be turned out all the time, and their shoulders will be generally slumped. So we want to
have a look. So Mitch stands up.
And the common posture that you'll see is this kind of thing. This common, hands to the front, feet apart, this kind of rounding forward, the weight of the world.
The head
on
going
people.
forward.
Yeah, chin out type position, very common, right? You can see a lot of the upper back. But in the typical sanshin position that we're in karate, I'll start from here. The feet are internally rotated. It's exact opposite to what you see on the streets. The weight is on the toes, which is a very good thing as well. Our pelvic tilt is not here with the bum sticking out. It's here. We're in this type of position. Our lower abdominals are tense. Our elbows are inside of our fists. Our upper back is straight. Our chin is in. So from the side on position here, I'm not here. Chin in, these types of positions. And this is a very healthy stimulus to give the body. It's not perfect. We've got one foot in front of the other, but that's why we do things
ambidextrously,
both sides. You know, so these are healthy things. Action is a very healthy thing to balance the body up, using the anterior shoulder muscles and triceps and chest to thrust out, but also using them posturally to pull back the kite hand, so it jams in again. So these are very square, healthy things to do, and we have an opportunity, I feel, in Kyokushin, especially where the Xians and his instructors have taught us over the years, to really emphasise ourselves posture, squareness, be deep in these stances, attention to detail. I just think is such a beautiful benefit of Kyokushin, and it can impact ourselves posturally enormously through life as well.
Yep, indeed. Thanks, Mitch. So I think, you know, karate is for life, and what that means is, I agree with you there, Mike, the amount of time I spend in the dojo now actually doing hard training is quite minimal. And for me, just to go to the dojo and do a little bit of work, maybe an hour, sometimes and even a gentle hour, but if I want to get a good sweat up, that's all you need, you know. I think it's really important to have that consistency above all else.
Just one more point, if you don't mind, is the thing in karate compared to traditional training, and my background as a physical prep coach, you know, is a lot of the flexibility, strength, speed, endurance, nutrition type of stuff, injury prevention. But the thing about karate and martial arts is they're skill-based. It's not just an aesthetic thing. It's not just you want to bench or squat or snatch or power clean so much. It's because those types of activities, which are wonderful, I'm not down on them, I work in them, but over time, we know where the performance is going to go. Aging catches up with all of us. Father time catches up with us all. But the technical things, like, you're amazing at all the technical things that in the grappling and the karate and all the little things, they can be rehearsed forever. I mean, I get inspired watching you and Sensei Peter Collis and all these guys who are just amazing, who have been at it for so long and are still getting better in a lot of areas when you think about it. So that's the other benefit of the martial arts, I think.
I agree with you. I think that long-term, consistent training is the key to life.
Yeah, the physical training is a byproduct of the technical things that we're doing, which is why we have that longevity compared to, say, a powerlifter. I'm not down on powerlifting, I work in it, all that, but the powerlifter's going to peak at between ages, 28 and 35 or 40, and then they're not going to peak after that.
Well, they're not going to get to 45, 50, 55 and one day find a new way to do a powerlift. No. Technically, they get it right at the start or they get it wrong. With the martial arts, it's just a never-ending story. It's like peeling layers of the onion back, and that's a very beautiful thing. And the mindfulness side of it, the meditation side, where you turn inwards and you learn to go inwards and quieten the senses, quieten the energy which normally runs out the senses, reverse that flow, bring it back into the spine. That goes on for lifetimes, forever, so it's very valuable in that respect. Mitch, thank you again.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Good to see you. Thanks, everybody. I hope you got something out of that. The two techniques. You only did two techniques today. That's all we wanted. But remember all those important postural things that as people get older, their posture changes, their spine rounds, their neck comes forward. You've got this, as much as you've got a perineal lock, you've also got this chin lock where you come back. So all these little things, martial arts, karate training, impacts beneficially. All right, guys, thank you very much once again. Always good to see Mitch.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
And we look forward to seeing you next week.